Okay, let's jump right in. Long before nutritional science even had a name, everyday people were out there cultivating these vibrant, incredibly resilient gardens full of life-saving greens and roots. Welcome to The Explainer, where we're going to journey back in time together to uncover the highly nutritious plants that medieval farmers absolutely depended on for survival. Plants that, crazy enough, completely vanished from our modern supermarket shelves.
It's a pretty fascinating question, right? Today we just throw around the word superfood like it's a modern marketing buzzword just to sell expensive powders or $15 smoothies. But think about it. For a medieval peasant, a true superfood was literally just a plant powerful enough to get their family through a brutal freezing winter when the ground was as hard as stone. We're talking about highly caloric, scurvy-preventing lifelines that kept a laboring body strong through the absolute harshest seasons imaginable.
Section 1. Survival, not a trend. Why they grew them. And this context is absolutely crucial.
Because here's the crux of the problem. There is a massive, stark contrast between medieval and modern agriculture. Modern commercial farming basically just walked away from every single one of these nutrient-dense plants. And why? Well, purely because they prioritized absolute efficiency, uniform sizing, and a really long shelf life so that foods could survive the massive modern supply chain. We essentially traded extreme hardiness and medicinal potency for perfectly round, uniform tomatoes that can practically bounce off a concrete floor.
Section 2. The forgotten daily staples. Greens and roots of the peasant table. Let's look at what they were actually eating.
So these forgotten staples serve the exact same roles as our modern greens, but honestly, they often did it way better. Take Alexander's, for instance. It was basically the medieval celery, providing crunch and this really bold flavor for over 1,000 years before modern celery was ever refined. And then you have good King Henry. The amazing thing here is that it was a perennial. That means unlike the annual vegetables we buy today, where farmers have to constantly replant, this stuff returned reliably from the exact same rootstock for decades. It offered higher mineral content than modern spinach and required absolutely zero maintenance.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Stinging nettle? Ouch, right? Today, we just treat it like this painful weed we have to avoid at all costs. But medieval necessity discovered a brilliant little life hack. Literally just 30 seconds of heat entirely neutralizes the sting. And in return, they got a vegetable that popped up weeks before anything else in early spring, packed with remarkable levels of iron, calcium, and protein. And then there's orache. This is a gorgeous, deep burgundy plant that provided crucial leafy greens well into the searing summer heat, long after regular spinach had just bolted and gone to seed.
Okay, let's talk about skirret. The really crucial point about this sweet, nutty root vegetable is that it acted as an early version of mashed potatoes centuries before the actual potato ever reached Europe. It was beloved by everyone, from royal kitchens to modest little farm plots, and it actually grew sweeter after the first frost. So why don't we eat it today? Well, it didn't fail the taste test, it just defied industry machinery. Because its roots are so deeply tangled and bundled together, modern tractors just couldn't harvest it easily. So we literally just stopped eating it.
Now here is a seriously fascinating piece of history for you. You might actually know woad as that famous indigo dye that ancient Britons used to paint themselves blue before battle. But those pragmatic medieval communities, they wasted absolutely nothing. They realized this extraordinarily cold, hardy plant produced abundant leaves during those hungry, desperate months of late winter when food stores were running dangerously low. So they ate the young leaves as a nutritious, mustard-like green. It was a literal lifesaver when absolutely nothing else would grow in the frozen dirt.
Moving right along to Section 3, Flavors and Medieval Medicine, the dual-purpose apothecary.
Let's consider verjuice. Now, it isn't a plant itself, but a really powerful product of them. Before citrus fruits like lemons were common up in Northern Europe, cooks relied heavily on the pressed juice of unripe grapes or crab apples. It gave them this complex, soft acidity that balanced rich meat dishes perfectly. But more than just flavor, medieval physicians intuitively prescribed it for digestive health and to cool fevers. And it's funny because modern chefs are just now rediscovering it, calling it an absolute revelation for culinary balance.
Right, and this era was just defined by sheer resourcefulness. Take wood avens. It looks super ordinary, but physicians back then called it the blessed herb. Its roots smell exactly like cloves. It was essentially the spice of the poor, delivering incredible flavor and antimicrobial properties without the crazy expense of imported spices. Then you've got sweet cicely. This is a fern-like herb with a very gentle anise flavor. It naturally sweetened tart fruit dishes, brilliantly acting as an early sugar substitute centuries before anyone even understood the clinical consequences of sugar, like diabetes.
Section 4.
the lost orchard fruit, from ubiquity to obscurity.
This brings us to a fruit called the medlar. This was a fruit so incredibly ubiquitous in medieval royal and cottage orchards alike that it was written about by Chaucer and famously referenced by Shakespeare. Honestly, most people today who see it just assume it has to be some exotic tropical import. But no! These ancient, strange little trees were once as common as apple trees all across England and France, and they were heavily relied upon in monastery gardens. Medieval physicians really valued them for soothing gut complaints. And guess what? Modern science has stepped in to confirm that the medlar is absolutely packed with tannins and polyphenols that actively promote gut health.
But here's the catch. To actually eat a medlar, you have to embrace a process called bledding. I know, it sounds a bit strange. It basically means letting the fruit naturally over-ripen until it looks, well, a little bit off. Yeah, it's essentially controlled rotting. But if you can push past that initial hesitation, it reveals pure magic. Bledding completely transforms the otherwise hard, astringent flesh of the fruit into something incredible. The inside turns into this soft, brown paste that you can literally scoop out with a spoon, and it tastes like a delicious, rich combination of spiced apple butter, dates, and cinnamon.
So, having seen all this, we really have to ask ourselves a question. If these plants were so delicious, so incredibly useful, and so remarkably tough that they thrived without any modern fertilizers, why in the world did they disappear from our tables entirely? Like, why aren't we eating medlars and skirret for dinner right now? Section 5. Science proves them right. The modern revival. Well, the answer to our mystery is that these plants absolutely didn't fail us nutritionally. They failed the modern commercial test. They didn't neatly fit into annual seed catalogs that require you to buy new seeds every single year. They lacked uniform sizing for those perfect supermarket displays. And they simply didn't have the sturdy shelf life needed to be tossed into a cargo container and shipped thousands of miles across oceans.
And this is honestly the most amazing part to me. Modern laboratories are now analyzing these forgotten plants, and they are finding the exact bioactive compounds that medieval experiencers had already completely mapped out purely through necessity. They didn't have microscopes, right? But they knew wood avens cured infections, and today we know it's because it contains eugenol, which is a proven antimicrobial. They knew red orache treated inflammation, and today we know it's because it's loaded with anthocyanin antioxidants. It is just fascinating how sheer human survival instinct precisely mirrored chemical reality.
The knowledge was never wrong. We simply stopped teaching it. That quote beautifully captures the crucial takeaway here. These 10 plants were never just quaint culinary curiosities or old wives' tales. No, they were vital, life-saving survival tools, tested and refined by generations of people whose very lives depended on getting it right. The ancient knowledge of their power was never wrong. The modern supply chain simply decided to stop teaching it to us.
Which brings us to the end of this explainer. Being totally impractical for a massive industrial food complex means absolutely nothing when it comes to your own backyard garden. So the only question left for you is, which of these resilient, time-tested medieval superfoods are you eager to revive and plant in your own soil? It might just be time to grow something that the ancient world already knew was extraordinary. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep learning.